This is Tehachapi. Sit back and relax as Key, Corey, Greg, and Ashley talk about what's happening in and around Tehachapi.
It's Tehachapi time. Key Budge, Greg Garrett, Corey Costello joining us today from our Tehachapi Police Department, Acting Lieutenant Jason Dunham. Jason, welcome to Tehachapi.
Thanks for having me.
And guys, how are you? I forgot, kind of glanced over that.
Skipped right over us.
Did you notice that?
I did.
You went right to the guest, which is very...
It's because there's a uniform in the room.
A badge and a gun.
And
That's
Key is from that world, and it's just all of a sudden, we just
right.
don't matter. Straight to the uniform.
That's right.
But I get it.
Read you like a book, Key.
But I get it because we respect TPD.
That's right.
Because they provide a great service to our city.
Exactly right. So, Jason, welcome back. You and I had a chance to talk in December. We talked about holiday safety tips for the public, and that was very well received. And it's time to get you back and talk about all things TPD here in the city of Tehachapi.
I'm glad to be here and glad to talk about it.
Where do you want to jump off, Greg? I mean, we've got several things that we want to ask Jason about, but you as the city manager, you're in charge of all public safety, overseeing this, directing what occurs here in the city when we look to make sure that the public feels safe. And I know that's huge for you.
Well, public safety is number one in our city and lots of communities, quite frankly. And the voters passed Measure S recently, so thank you again for that. And part of the logic there was public safety, police and fire, and infrastructure. And so as we continue to build our organization, it wasn't so many years ago that we brought back Tehachapi Police Department from the Kern County Sheriff. And then we built a brand new facility, which is an amazing, efficient facility. And then we've been filling it with people that are very dedicated to public safety in our city and even our community, quite frankly. We have mutual aid agreements with everyone around us nearly. But we have great communications dispatch, great officers, leadership. We're currently recruiting for a replacement chief. And Dunham has stepped up. Thank you very much again. Acting lieutenant and doing a superb job, quite frankly. But let's talk about the people. That's, we don't manage computers or desks. We manage people, and we always want to hire the best of the best of the best. And I know there's been several awards recently with different individuals within the department. So let's talk about people.
Absolutely. One of our dispatchers is going to receive an award for National 911 Dispatcher Public Safety Award. Presented by the VFW, then that'll take place Monday at City Council, and that's Ray Budge.
Dispatcher of the Year, this acknowledgement, it's coming from, like you said, the VFW.
Yes.
And it's done on a national basis, and they're recognizing Ray from our region. And I think we should remind people that when people call 911 in the city of Tehachapi, it goes to the Tehachapi Police Department and our dispatch center.
Yes.
And how many dispatchers do we have operating, manning, the phones and the counter?
So currently there's 5 with a dispatch supervisor, and then we just hired one. She will start on the 19th, and we are in the market for another one and a part-time dispatcher.
And that's a 24/7 operation, right?
24/7.
If you call Tehachapi Police Department, the landline, or 911, there's always somebody to answer the phone to help out.
Yes.
And it makes a difference for you when you're out there in black and white and you're around town. Would you rather have a local dispatch person, or would you rather have it come from a centralized location somewhere else out in the county?
Local is always better.
I mean, the insight that these individuals have and their knowledge of city streets and I'm sure extra resources for the officers, it makes a difference.
Absolutely. You want somebody that knows your community. You want somebody that knows, where is Curry? Where is J Street? You want that. You don't want somebody 60 miles away who has no idea where that is, especially when you need help.
And I would think that, as they're answering the phones, people, when it's a 911 call, there's some amount of stress that's involved from that person that's making the call. So it's not like you and I talking right now where it's a normal conversation, it's easy to listen to. There's an amount of stress, and their voice is going to be just giving out too much information or not enough information or get here now, and they're not telling you anything else. What are some of those things that, the dispatchers experience that then they've got to get that information because it's got to get to the officers?
Yes. So they've got to take all this information that's coming in, listen to the information that's coming, decipher it all, and get it to us effectively and efficiently so that when we arrive, we know what we're getting into. They are the eyes and the ears before we even get there. They're going to send us to a crime in progress or a baby not breathing, and they're gathering all that information.
And it's citizen safety, but also officer
100%.
safety, right? It's a super important. It's the start of the completion of a call, right? When somebody calls 911, usually they're in a dire need.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than getting a call where it's a 911 hang up and you just know you're going to this location to try and figure out what the heck is occurring and you have no idea. And their job is to try and pull it out, stretch it out, keep them on the line.
Yes.
And give you, and then also, I'm sure when information goes in, it probably prompts questions from the officers responding.
It does, but I think our dispatchers, having local knowledge and local community involvement, they know what types of questions to ask. And sometimes you may have a frequent flyer that is somebody who calls for a specific issue, and our dispatchers know, hey, this is maybe not an emergency. This person is having this issue. We like that type of stuff where somebody 60, 100 miles away, they may or may not know that.
So you call them a frequent flyer. I mean, that's the person that calls, and it's just it's more routine than it is an emergency.
Yeah, I mean,
But you never know. It might be that time when they actually need help.
Could be. But, they have figured out that, maybe this person needs help, a lift assist, or maybe this person has fallen out of their wheelchair, anything. There's a million reasons why it's best to have local involvement. And these dispatchers, they know. They can tell you, like Greg said, no, this is an emergency, this isn't normal, or this is normal.
But sometimes they can't tell you it's an emergency. I was just thinking about Paul Pelosi. When the guy broke into his house in San Francisco, he was talking in code a little bit to the dispatcher, like, oh, everything's okay. I'm paraphrasing a lot here, but the dispatcher was probing and started to figure out, wait, something's going on. And I think it was a lady. She dispatched the officers to the home. Thank God, right?
Yep.
So you never know. And then we also have texting. Is that right? Remind me on how that works. If you don't have access to a telephone, or maybe you don't want to verbalize something, you're hiding from somebody in a closet. I'm being very dramatic here, but it happens. You can text Tehachapi Police Department.
You can text 911, and it'll even work on a phone with no service.
Right.
And that's so they're able to, someone who's in need, like you said, Greg, perhaps it's a medical need. And they
and you can't talk.
You can't verbalize whatever it is.
But you have the wherewithal to maybe text 911 like help.
Right. And that's technology that was put in place a few years ago.
Yes.
And it's still operational. And I know that, if I remember correctly, a couple of years ago, we received 1 or 2 text 911 calls within the first month or two of it going in operation. And it was, it's something that the dispatchers are trained in.
Yep.
And they're able to go ahead and dispatch you based on that text version. And that's, if you think about it, we have TextMyGov, which is a software program that we implemented a couple of years ago to make it easier for people to report potholes or ask a question. And they just, society doesn't want to talk to people or get on a call center. And it can be the same for that as well. Using this younger demographic, this younger generation, texting is what they know.
Yeah, and we've seen oftentimes some people text because they don't want to be viewed as somebody who's telling on somebody else. Yeah. So they'll kind of utilize that. So we've seen that happen. I'm
kind of curious what the transition's sort of been like. I mean, we talked about you stepped up as acting lieutenant. But it looks like TPD has not missed a beat. So what's that kind of transition been like? And the men and women of the department and how they've responded and continue to do their jobs.
It's been tough for me. I kind of got shotgun blasted into a little bit, but I've embraced the different side of law enforcement. I think there's so many wheels that go on to make sure that day-to-day things are occurring, and all of the officers there, the sergeants, everybody's doing an outstanding job. There's no change in service whatsoever for the community. And in fact, we had our staff meeting yesterday, and our stats are up from a year ago, January 1st to the 15th. They're actually up. So they're doing a tremendous job.
Nice.
Now, when you talk about stats, we're talking about contacts and calls for service and just answering, being there for the public.
Absolutely. So arrests, reports. I think the only thing that was down was call for service was down a little bit.
Now, when we have a weather event like we did, the big snowstorms, I'm betting that certain calls go way down, and maybe that's that other kind of call, traffic related, might pop up more. Did you guys see a big change, based on, the weather circumstances?
That's an odd question. I feel like the 58 was shut down very quickly this snowstorm. And so I think that limited some of those phone calls for traffic stuff. I think they, shut the freeway down. And typically what happens is they get that freeway shut down, and then we get landlocked with people that are traveling to and from, and they can't get out of here. So we didn't see a significant increase in those types of calls. But yes, Corey had talked about it where they were kind of stacked up on the boulevard trying to get back on the freeway. And, those things make traffic hazards. We've got to figure out, you got to park somewhere else. You can't just park in the middle of the roadway here. But all in all, we didn't have a tremendous increase in those types of calls, actually.
We assist Caltrans, CHB, Kern County Sheriff, others during that time, too. It's one cohesive effort for this valley, for sure.
Yeah.
And what about programs that we have coming up that you guys participate in on a regular basis? Or do we have anything that's coming up here as we head towards spring? I know that's usually when we start seeing programs.
Yeah, so the first one that comes to mind is the drug take back. That's occurring April 22nd from 10 to 2. That's any drugs that you have, prescription medication that you no longer are utilizing. We like to get that stuff. There's a drop-off box at the police department, and then once that day is concluded, that stuff all goes to the DEA, and they dispose of it appropriately. So that's coming up, but National Night Out is coming up. All that stuff that you typically see is all going to occur.
Okay, now, so let's stick with the drug take back. We talk about prescription medications, and people kind of look and things expire. You're no longer on it, and people want to go ahead and flush it.
Right.
And we don't want to do that. And I learned this by talking to Tyler Napier in our water department here at Public Works. And he says, you don't want to put prescription meds inside the water system. It goes back in to be treated, and they don't have, I guess they're not able to break down some of the chemicals that are in these medications. So then that gets reintroduced into the water system at some point. So it's not healthy to dispose of that way.
Right.
When people are turning in their meds, is there anything that we stay away from?
To my knowledge, no. I think the DEA will accept anything other than syringes, stuff like that. And it's not exclusive to narcotic medication. It's any medication. It could be a heart medication that you no longer take, or it didn't work out for you. It's anything like that.
Expired aspirin. It doesn't matter. If it's in a pill box, bring it.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll take it all.
Curious about, we mentioned this a few minutes ago, but we have a relatively safe city, safe community. You guys do a great job. We are surrounded sometimes by chaos in other communities that have higher crime rates. What are those issues that are sort of around us that sometimes do pop into the city and you all have to deal with?
Well, I think anybody that's been around here for a while has seen the eastern part of Kern County change. Mm-hmm. And so with that change, some of those changes or some of those folks that maybe live somewhere else will live in these communities, and they will sometimes or oftentimes look to our community to commit like retail theft. Mm-hmm. That's probably one of the biggest things that we deal with are people coming from outside of our community to try and steal basically from Walmart and Tractor Supply and Home Depot. So we are on top of that. We're aware of what is occurring. We're not ignorant to that. We know full well that people are coming from Palmdale and Lancaster, Bakersfield. But I think anybody that is listening to this podcast or that knows Tehachapi, you will see that the things that are occurring outside of us are not what's occurring here. And there's several reasons for that. Lack of staff for the sheriff's department. The eastern part of the county is not staffed sufficiently.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that
it's just not.
Kern County Sheriff has not been able to staff locally a full-time sheriff presence in our area at all. And so it's oftentimes we'll get the call. And we'll go if it's absolutely necessary, but we cannot leave our city exposed. Yeah. That's the bottom line.
I'm kind of curious too. Like, we've talked about the actual job here, but and now we mentioned you're the acting lieutenant. But what first of all, how long have you been doing this job, and what actually got you into law enforcement? I'm kind of interested in your backstory. What got you to this point today? And don't say because you can't sing and dance, because that's my line.
So I've been here in May. It'll be 16 years.
Wow.
My uncle did 21 years, I think, with LA County as reserve. And when I was younger, he kept pushing me, come out. And I I didn't really want to. I thought I was going to take over my father's business. And then I dated a woman whose brother-in-law took me on a ride along in Lancaster. And within, I'd say, our first traffic stop, I'm like, this is the job for me.
You were hooked. You were hooked, huh? You're calling.
And basically, that was a traffic stop, and there was some drugs in the car. And I remember him telling me, hey, I'm going to put this guy in the back seat, and when you see him squirming, I'm close to the drugs. And he goes, you just tell me when he's squirming. And sure enough, this guy started looking, and I'm like, all right, Jimmy, now he's looking. And so, up come the big bag of marijuana, and that was it for me. I was hooked since then. This is the only department I've worked at. Gosh, we put carpet and tile in the annex building over there back then in 2007. So also one of the things that pushed me, when I was 16, my grandmother was murdered. And I remember the feeling of helplessness, like, why can't they put this guy in jail? And I think that pushed me in my career to solve these crimes and help these people that they feel helpless. We can't get them all. We oftentimes know who's done it or who's committed a crime, but we have to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. So there are occasions where you can't, but I've always taken it personally to get those things convicted and get people their justice. So there's a lot to it, but I love this profession. I think it's taken a hit lately for some bad apples, which are in every, it doesn't matter what profession, there's bad apples. Mm-hmm. We hire from the human race, and but I think this is a noble profession, and I think the men and women that go out there in the dark alley that have no idea, like Keith talked about the call, you don't know what's going to happen. People sleep well at night knowing that there are people that are going to go out there and get shot at or get in a fight or stabbed, and it's a great profession to be a part of.
Wow, that was a very powerful statement.
Yes, it was.
That was a great 2 minutes. We can start and stop right there. It was very powerful.
Yeah. You brought up the proving cases, and it seems like, and you hear this sometimes on jury duty, sometimes you hear this from a prosecutor especially, but, crime shows and the CSIs of the world and everyone now, when they go, does those things make the job a little harder when it comes to investigation? Because now everybody's looking for, well, where's the DNA on, because they see that on TV, they see it on Law and Order, it gets wrapped up in an hour. Does that make it a little tougher? You guys have to maybe be a little more in depth in your reports and your investigations now?
It makes it tougher, and sometimes the community doesn't understand that we could have a crime that occurred and we can't get DNA off of or fingerprints off of something that you think we can. Everything that you see on TV is not exactly how the business operates. Our police department, our guys work cases from start to finish. Almost all of our guys know how to write search warrants, arrest warrants. You could go to a bigger agency and they don't know how to do that. They have no idea what that is because they're just taking face pages and then they've got a whole detective section. So I pride myself that our officers are very well-rounded. And in fact, if they do leave, I always tell them, you're going to be leaps and bounds ahead of anybody you're going to work around. I just spoke with somebody that went to Paso Robles that left here from us, and she said, everything I learned that you taught me put me in number one when I came here. None of these people knew anything that was going on. So I pride myself in that. But yes, Corey, to answer your question, everything you see on TV is not always possible.
Yeah. I thought it was true. And then I was watching Magnum PI, and he was doing this and doing that, taking fingerprints and then working with the PD, and this and that. And like, bam, they caught the guy. Like, isn't that how that works? No, it's not.
Yeah, but we actually won. The police department won an award for that sort of staffing mentality several years ago, for the ability that the investigations were handled by the officer from start to finish. Yep. We don't have a bunch of detectives. We don't have, and so yeah, you're right. I think most people in a lot of agencies, they write the first report and then it just gets handed off. Yeah, and they go back to just doing their patrols. So yeah, I think it's good and bad. It's a little more work, but at the same time, you're right. People are prepared and they're like much probably better rounded professional because of that aspect.
And there's more buy-in to the community. I don't want to talk bad about larger agencies, but if you don't feel upset when something happens on your shift, then you don't have buy-in into that community. Yeah. And I think our guys here have that because they're going to work that case if they can from start to finish. At a big agency, you don't care if that business got burglarized. For you, it's another report before you go home.
Yeah, I get 7 reports in a night.
Yeah.
And I have no chance to follow up on any of them. Yeah. They get put into a tray and handed off.
Yep. And our guys take offense to that. Who did this? And let's get them to court.
I was in a meeting with Dunham and the sergeants yesterday. It was very profound because the sergeants, they care deeply about their staff, and they care deeply about this community and what was going on. And they were talking details, and it was really a great moment, a very proud moment for me to know and to be reminded that the people that we have on the payroll are just not getting a paycheck. They care about this city and this community. They truly care.
They invest. I mean, as a police officer, you have, in this time that we're in, you have opportunity to go to agencies across the country. I mean, let alone just in California, Southern California, Central California. There's multiple agencies vying for your services.
Yeah.
This community appreciates the work that's put in. And I know that, I mean, working in LA County, there would be certain areas that were appreciative, and there were others that, it was higher crime areas, and it was tougher to work. But when you got an opportunity to work with a community that supports, the activity, wants to be safe, and take an active participation in being a supporter, and also, I guess, minimizing their own vulnerabilities,
right,
and not just becoming someone who sticks their head in the sand, but they pay attention. It makes a difference, and then that rubs off.
Yes.
And then we also have, speaking of support, Tehachapi Police Foundation, right? They're real. They actually host events, fundraising events that are supporting our officers, our staff, our dispatch. They raise money to buy different things that the city can't afford to buy, quite frankly, right? Money doesn't grow on trees. This is not Washington, D.C. We don't print money.
Right.
And so they assist in that world. So if you ever want to get involved, Tehachapi Police Foundation is a great opportunity for you.
Yes. I'm going to go back to what Keith was saying. So Officer Medina left, but before he did that, he went on a ride-along down there in San Bernardino, and he says, Sarge, over here, everybody waves at you, and down there, it was different. They weren't waving like they do in Tehachapi. And I said, see, there's a difference where you work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the community here definitely, and I I feel it being retired, it's appreciative. I mean, there's always some that are going to voice their opinions, and they should, because that's what keeps you doing the job the right way, and keeps you on your toes, and you are accountable for the way you conduct yourself and handle your business.
Absolutely. I have a saying, and everybody knows it. We don't work backwards here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's based on training. Mm-hmm. That's based on you as a supervisor making sure your staff is trained.
Yep.
And that they are able to understand and articulate the laws that they're working within.
Yep.
It's very complex these days. The state of California and the federal government have changed laws so rapidly recently with, people kind of revolving door and this and that. We've talked about it many times on this podcast and other venues, but it's challenging these days to do the right thing, to get that guy or gal, the help they need. It's just not available to them anymore.
Yeah. Some of them don't want the help.
And some of them don't want the help.
I think it just takes a little more, research and paperwork than it probably used to. I know we've had the discussion about there's certain things that I think across the board in the state, people assume that it's either legal or you can't go to jail for that anymore and this and that. And that's led to crime rates all across the state rise. But there's ways to do it. I mean, we just have to know the law and really dig into it. And I think our department does a good job digging into what the law actually says and where can you go after these people, despite things might being a little less penalty, but you can still get them off the street. You can still get them in jail for a short time. So it sounds like you guys really have to stay on top of the new laws and all that sort of thing, trainings and stuff, in order to be able to continue to keep the street safe.
And the reporting too, right? If you don't write the right report, then the DA will throw it out because it's not complete. And so you have to be very complete with what we do at our end.
Right. It has to be written so it can get through a jury trial.
That's right.
And I think that's probably one of the things you working with the district attorney's office is that I remember as a young officer learning, you think that you've documented everything. And then when you get on the stand and defense attorney's asking you about something, it's, well, I did that. Well, why didn't you write it down? It's like, ooh, I didn't, and you learn as you go. So, I mean, the training never stops, whether you've been on a year, 5 years, 20 years, you continue to learn and evolve. And a part of that is, when you present cases to the district attorney and the DA asks you a question. And then when you get on the stand and the defense asks you, go, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, and that's how you grow it. And the next time you handle that kind of a case, you remember exactly what the defense asked you, because that's now something that you're going to add to your next investigation.
Absolutely. So, you know, when you go through the police academy, they break down these crimes for you. These are the elements. Somebody in my time of working told me, get out of that mindset of reading the penal code, go to the jury instruction, answer all the questions that are in the jury instruction, and you won't lose a case. And so that's the way that I've tried to teach is, what does the jury instruction say for that crime? If those things are answered, it's in the DA's hands.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, this is your opportunity to put your recruiter hat on. Okay. You said some great things about the Tehachapi Police Department. So if anybody is listening that is either, you know, considering getting into this profession, or maybe is already in this profession, maybe they're commuting to a larger agency right now, listening to this podcast, what would be your recruiting pitch to why work for the Tehachapi Police Department?
Well, do you want to dodge bullets every day, or do you want to work somewhere that you can invest your time? There are places for everybody to work. Some people want to work where it's nonstop chaos, and some people want to work where there's a little bit of chaos, but there's time to actually do work, know your community, talk to the neighbors. I can tell you, I worked narcotics for 3 years. It was nonstop every day. I enjoyed it. However, driving around here, having coffee with the mayor, things like that, I enjoy that more than being in war. I mean, it's that simple. It's whatever you want in this career. This is the best place to work in Kern County, hands down. I don't care what anybody says.
Well, I think you even talked about it earlier in what we asked you another question, but it brings it back, is that you're able to follow through and take something and you get a result at the end, versus going to a large agency and you're 7 reports down, you've handled 20 calls in a shift. And here you got that call, and you might have probably less volumes of calls.
Yes.
So we're able to stick with something and you take it to the finish line. You're able to talk to the neighbors and find witnesses, and then track down the bad guy if there's a bad guy or whatever it is. You're able to actually come to a conclusion versus just handing it off. So 3 days later, the next guy can pick up that case and then try and pick up a cold lead. You're able to do it while it's still hot.
Yeah, and there's certain people that they could care less. They want to get their 2-page,
Right.
Report written, and they could care less. For me, I like to know, what did that guy get convicted of? How much time is he doing? That's how you make this community better, is that guy went away for 5 years because he did that. And in this community, unlike Bakersfield or Lancaster, when you make an arrest because somebody's going around burglarizing everything, the results are immediate. That stuff stops immediately. In Lancaster and Palmdale, you could do that 20 times a night and it doesn't stop because it's too far behind. So in this community, it's It's instant gratification when you make those kind of cases.
It makes a difference. There's many definitions of, let's say, community policing, but community policing in my mind is the community is partnering with, and TPD is partnering with the community. Mm-hmm. It's a two-way street. We respect each other. We communicate with each other, and it's our community, and we care, and that's what makes a difference.
Yes.
Sounds like too that there's a lot of different traits and a lot of different pieces of being a law enforcement professional. You need to be a good communicator. Mm-hmm. You need to be a good writer, sounds like, because you got a lot of reports to fill out. And to Key's point earlier, you got to make sure they're pretty thorough these days. You got to have that just ability to connect with people, especially in a town like this, because you're going to see folks over and over again. You got to be kind of part psychologist because you're dealing with many different types. So it sounds like it's not as simple as, hey, we're going to pass this test at the academy, we're going to be good to go. You've got these different 5-6 skill sets that are always evolving in order to be
well,
a good
a lot of these
officer.
guys have bachelor's degrees and master's degrees.
Yeah.
It's not just a guy that we hired off the street and said, okay, we want to force a square peg into a round hole and make you a police officer. It's a desire, usually. It's a calling, and there's training and there's education. There's so many elements to becoming an officer.
And let me insert just quickly. You don't have to have the college education to do this job.
Not required.
Correctly. what happens, life experience comes in. Whether, like Jason, you talked about that very personal moment that
Yes.
happened in your life, okay, and that has an impact. What I've seen is some of those officers that come across when they're a little bit older, mid to late 20s, maybe even early 30s to start that career, they've held other jobs. They've been in other career fields. They've been married. They've gone through a divorce, whatever it is. And that life experience translates into how officers respond and handle calls. Because the majority of the calls are, maybe it's a neighbor dispute or it's a family argument. And you're going and you're handling these domestic issues and not a burglary or an auto theft or something like that.
Right.
And you've got to be able to relate. You've got to be able to empathize. And there's a lot of things that you pull from your person in your life experience that then go into handling a call.
Yes.
You know, and I think that probably is one of the things that, one of those emotions is the empathy. And then that connects you to the victim or potential witnesses. And then they open up and realize, oh, I'm dealing with an officer that really cares.
Right.
You know, and that connectability, you probably can go a little bit further in your investigation or handling the situation, getting some kind of resolve to it.
Right. You have to be able to communicate. My father was very critical of the police when I was young, and he would say, they have no common sense. Those guys have no common sense. If one runs that way, they all run that way. I've always tried to operate differently. I've always tried to operate with common sense. One of the things that Corey hit on that nobody will tell you when you're trying to do this job is that 90% of what you do is right. They don't tell you that when you go through the police academy. Everybody thinks it's running and gunning, but 3 minutes of fun is 5 hours of paperwork, and they don't tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you do in your day-to-day that don't involve writing a report, but it's that connection. It's talking to that kid who got off the bus and making that connection at a community level.
Well, diffusing certain arguments that could turn deadly. You know, if somebody's there with common sense and they're diffusing the situation, you may have saved a life.
I'm curious. I don't know if I've asked this question before to
Probably.
to somebody in law enforcement or just in general, but I like to always ask this question. Was there one specific call, one specific moment, one specific time when you're like, yep, this is why I do this job. This is why I like this job. You know, was there in your last 16 years, I mean, heck, it could have been recently, but we're like, yep, this is why I like doing this.
So for me, Corey, it's when you have your frequent flyer say, person you deal with that's addicted to drugs. When I see that person get off of drugs, that's what makes me happy. And when I was younger working here, I would tell people, you got to get out of here. And they would take offense to that. No, I grew up in Tehachapi. I'm not leaving here. But I've told them, if you get out of here, you will get clean. Yeah. And when they get clean, for me, there's many things that make me happy, but that makes me happy. That makes me feel like I had an impact on them and they see the bigger picture. And I've taken people's children from them and had them come back and thank me. Thank you for getting me clean. So for me, drugs they've been minimized by the state, but they destroy families and they destroy communities.
So it's the root of so many probably crimes and problems.
Sure is.
It starts, the root is drug use.
Yes.
In any community.
Yeah.
It's a cancer.
It's bad. Sure. It's our state's taking a position to enable these people to spiral out of control.
I'm going to pull one back, and I'll answer to that too from my memory because it jarred one. I remember going through a checkout, and the cashier says, "You're Deputy Budge," and I go, "Oh no."
Oh yeah, right.
So who's asking?
Right,
Yeah.
and it's like she goes, "You yelled at me," and I go, "Oh," I'm like, "Oh no." It's like, yeah, I've yelled at some people, and go, okay, hopefully. I'm sorry. Hopefully it worked. She goes, no, it was the best thing that ever happened. She goes, you've been out to my house before, and my husband was, it was domestic violence.
Yeah.
And you finally, after the third time out, started to yell at me, and you said, when is enough? When are we going to end this right now? And you need to do it for your kids. And I was pretty strong with it.
Yeah.
And then we ended up, she ended up making that decision. And she goes, it changed her life, better for the kids. And it was one of those moments where you just go, wow, okay.
Had an impact.
Right. But you had to kind of change. It's like, you talk to people and you talk, and then you realize it's going through one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
And then you have to change your vocabulary. You know, and you have to be a little stronger, a little sterner. And then they start to wake up and realize. So those are that. But that was one moment I remember. I go, wow. Okay.
There's so much more to policing than I think the average guy may know, understand, even want to know, need to know. That we are here and we are protecting the city.
I'm just so glad that we get to deal with the nice version of Key. You know, because it sounds like he could have been. You know, I can't even imagine him yelling. But you know, we don't get to see that side of him anymore.
And he's a big guy,
right? So I'm like, I mean, I'm glad.
Thank God you never come to my house.
There's a time when you have to react.
The cops have only been to my house one time, and that's when my oldest son Levi was 2, and he pushed the alarm, like the panic button.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't even know it. It wasn't working well. Whatever. Kern County Sheriff showed up, and they're like, "Oh, they maybe come out of the house." I'm like, "No, it's everything's fine. Really, it's all fine."
Oh man.
So yeah, that's the extent of my. Yeah, this is my home.
Yeah.
I remember back when the Tehachapi Police Department was starting, and I was still at LA County Sheriff, and then I got to work with Jason, and we used to do some shared trainings back and forth. So, you know, we chewed a little bit of that same dirt or shared some of those stories way back, you know, more than 10 years ago. So, yeah, that was
one of the best decisions the city of Tehachapi ever made was to bring Tehachapi Police Department back into our fold, if you will.
And I think there was a vote of confidence too.
Absolutely. With Measure S.
By Measure S,
Right.
was that people said, yes, this has been a successful venture. We understand that public safety in general, it's more expensive now. And we talked about recruiting and retention is always an issue in a small agency. Some people want more action. But so we need to be able to pay these folks more, you know, bring them in and recruit them. And so people said, yes, let's keep that going. Dispatch as well. Dispatch was scored very high on the priority list for Measure S. When people filled out their surveys, they said local dispatch and local police officers. We want to continue that. So that was a great vote of confidence for the department to have people say, yes, we will spend more in sales tax money in order to help fund this department.
We've got to keep a little slice of the Midwest in Tehachapi.
Yes. Sure. And the only way you get that is with local control.
That's right.
Like if the main headquarters is 200 miles away, it just doesn't work. It's been proven and proven.
That's right. That's right.
So, Jason, if there is an officer at another department that's maybe heard some of tonight's conversation, go, interesting, Tehachapi, maybe I should check it out. Can they give you a call and coordinate a ride along and as a lateral officer and just to kind of come and check it out and see if what we're talking about is real?
Absolutely. They can fill out a ride along form and do a ride along as a lateral. We are currently trying to hire 2 police officers right now. So, you know, they can get to the application on the city's website. But, yeah, we encourage people to come and see what our community has to offer, not only for you to work, but for your family. This is the best place to raise a family. Look around. It's clean. When I worked narcotics, I used to tell Amelia, Bakersfield is dirty. And she took offense to that because she lived there. This place is clean.
Yeah. And, you know, to that point, I know you've had some folks come in, some officers from other larger agencies, and to the point on the family side, you know, spoken to their family members, and they've said, oh, it's not that this is a cakewalk, but they said, you know, I don't worry as much as I used to worry. Obviously, there's always risk every time you start a shift. But it's, you know, when they were working in larger agencies in larger cities, I was worried about them. I was sending texts 7 times a night.
Yeah.
Are you okay? Are you okay? Now, I don't really worry about it, and I, you know, get to see them more. So that's a good to hear that from, you know, the family side to say, yeah, I feel so much better now that they're working in Tehachapi as opposed to being somewhere else.
And, you know, that's distracting for the officer.
Yeah.
That if the spouse has got to reach out 6-7 times a shift to make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
That's distracting for the officer to stay focused on what they're doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Could be a safety issue.
Oh, for sure it is. Yeah. There's no question about that.
Okay, we're advertising and recruiting for a police chief. Want to make sure that we get the right person in those shoes to take us to that next level.
And I want to say one more attractive thing about for some officers is the shifts that the officers get to work here. And I think that working why don't you kind of describe the schedule as a uniform officer?
So for a uniform officer, we offer a 12-hour shift schedule. So 1 week you're going to work 3 days, and the next week you're going to work 4. So you're guaranteed 4 days off 1 week and 3 the next. So when we talk about the younger officers and we talk about work-life balance, on your 4 day off, you can go do almost anything that you need to go do.
Where do I apply?
Let's go to the city's website.
Well, we've talked about that too, though. I mean, even when you're working, for example, and we've encouraged this actually with our officers, you might be on duty, you might be working, but your son has a Little League game. Okay, well, if you're not on a call, show up in uniform and watch the Little League game.
You're still policing,
You're
right?
still policing, and it's a good presence for the community, but you can be involved and still, witness things, and it's good. It's a good presence, and it's also, you can feel like you're still involved and you're not. And obviously, if a call goes, you got to go. But
Right.
It's nice to have that sort of flexibility a little bit too if you're in the community.
Little community-oriented policing.
There you go.
Exactly.
There you go.
So yeah, for sure. I think it's those are great benefits for people. And then again, I've talked to other officers and they've said when they bring in new people, and they always like to tell them, yeah, it's great in Tehachapi because when people see you on the street, they wave at you with all their fingers.
Yes.
And that doesn't happen in a lot of communities.
And you know what, Corey? I can't tell you how many times I've, went to go get a coffee or went to go get something to eat, and somebody's paid for my meal.
Yeah.
Where even when things are going crazy in the world, that stuff was still happening here.
Yeah.
As just a thank you to the police.
Yeah, for sure.
And we had coffee with the mayor this morning, and there was someone there from a community group. And so give you a little feedback here. They were talking about community events, and they said, I just appreciate that Tehachapi Police Department was present. They stopped by our event, and we felt safe.
Good.
So just to give you that feedback, and it was just from a community member today at the event that just thought that they would talk about future events, and then they brought that up out of the blue. We didn't even mention, but maybe they saw you there and they said, "Oh, well, the Tehachapi Police Department was great. They really made us feel safe." So that's another kind of testament to the organization and being present, being visible.
Yeah, we're all a team. We're everybody at this city. Everybody's a team to make this the best place that we can make it.
And you said something there too about being we're all part of the city. We're all a team. Our public works department, things like that. The fact that we're one organization, even though it's separate departments, you're able to make that call very quickly. And if you needed assistance from the roads department because something happened and you're dealing with something like a traffic diversion or something, they're seconds away.
Yes.
Versus waiting hours to get another agency involved, where the county's got to talk to another city or a state organization. And also, well, their ETA is an hour away.
Yep.
Not here.
Not here.
That even works on other things like even code enforcement issues. We all communicate about those because those are super important. And it's a big focus of the police department. You start letting those things slide and it becomes an issue. And so, and I'll get the calls too, but it'll be, someone's selling stuffed animals on the side of the road. Like, we don't do that in Tehachapi. Well, why don't we? Well, there's other businesses that have actually invested, but B, a lot of these roadside vendors and stuff, they're human trafficked. They're indentured servants for coming over for migration. Like, it's a bad deal. There's a dirty secret behind a lot of that stuff. And so, I got a lot of community calls when we had a rash of those recently, and like TPD was out to move them along. So those things are important, and we're able to communicate real quickly with the police department to fill those issues, whether it's public works support or it's code enforcement or something like that.
The bummer is they've moved out to the county and they're there every day.
Yeah.
Which is really a bummer.
Yeah, for
We're
sure.
talking about coverage.
Right.
But Key, I don't want people to, we're talking about all the good things, if you will, but I don't want the listener to think we're sugarcoating anything. Because if you have something, if you have a suggestion, if you have a criticism, we want to know. We want to know because we're not perfect. None of us are.
Right.
And we want to continue to hone our processes, right? And sharpen our skills and be there for you when you need us.
That's how we get better.
Yeah.
That's how we get better. So yeah, it's not sugarcoating, and let's make sure that people know that there's something out there. We want to know about it.
Yep.
Call me.
Okay, so
Call Dunham.
let's recap a couple of things. So if there's any lateral officers that are interested in this opportunity, we can go to liveuptehachapi.com, or we actually have TehachapiPoliceDepartment.com.
Yeah, TehachapiPD.com.
And Key, we've actually sent individuals to the academy and paid for the academy. So there's some opportunities
So
there.
beyond the lateral, so if there's someone aspiring that would like to
That's
be a
right.
police officer.
The right person.
Okay. So we'll send you to the website. And then if anyone maybe is curious, wants to do that ride along, they can reach out to you, Jason.
Yep. Reach
Okay.
out to the police department. We're like any other department. There's a form that's got to be filled out, and we vet you, make sure that you're able
you
to
are.
do a ride along and who you are, who you say you are, and then you can come out and ride and see what this community has to offer.
I still have to do mine. I've been meaning to do that for years.
Oh,
I need to
Corey,
do
you
that.
got to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
You got to do. I remember when I did some ride-alongs when I was thinking about the job. And like Jason said, that experience, it opens your eyes.
I'm not thinking about the job. I just like get a better understanding what they're doing. Keep trying to get me out of here.
It's your role as the assistant city manager to
Absolutely.
get a better understanding for what the men and women of the Tehachapi Police Department go through, deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
It's different than the person that comes at the counter. Some of it's the same, but there's a lot different. And then when it's in the middle of some heated thing now, you get a real good idea of like, oh, wow, okay.
It's eye-opening.
Yeah,
Everything about the dispatch, the call, when do you initiate lights and sirens? Where are you going? How do you approach the scene? How do you try to diffuse things? On and on and on, right?
Yep.
I'm only doing a ride along if we get to run the siren at some point. Just saying. Just saying.
Well, you could probably test it out in the parking lot. That way they're not violating policies. They check their equipment before they go into shift. And then also we're looking for dispatchers. We could hire a couple of more. Same thing. Let's go to the website and take a look at that. Now, if a dispatcher wanted to come in, do we have the civilian ride-along that can...
They have a sit-along is what it's called.
Okay.
So you can come into dispatch and see how that operates. And we're one of the few places where if you are interested in being a dispatcher, you can come work here or you can be hired here without any training. We can get you the training that you need. There is a test involved before we'll put you through the application process to make sure you're capable of reading, writing, and typing, but that's something that you can do where most places you kind of already have to be a dispatcher.
And if you don't have those skill sets, there are trainings available through the California Post, the Peace Officer Standards and Training that civilians can take ahead of time to kind of test their skills or
You've got to really be
skills.
able to multitask.
Right.
You've been in the communication center. It's like NASA.
Yeah.
Screens everywhere. You have to really be on top of what's
Exactly.
going on. So.
And then also we've got the drug take back day. That's going to be Saturday, April 22nd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Bring your expired, unwanted, unused prescription medications or other things that are in your medicine cabinet that are non-sharps to the Tehachapi Police Department, and you guys will properly dispose of those.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We can follow along. Tehachapi Police Department has its own Facebook page, and we're trying to get some postings up there as you guys come across interesting things, just kind of, or something that's just not in your, what the public might even perceive to be in your daily agenda. Whether it's something as simple as a lost dog and getting it replaced, rehomed, or if it's that snow event or whatever it is. Officers interacting with kids. It's all right there on our Facebook page for Tehachapi Police Department.
Take a look at all the social medias, but we encourage you to take a look at the police departments. We're out there doing stuff every day.
Perfect. All right. Well, guys.
I'm good, Key.
Corey.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Jason, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
If you've got a question for our police department or for Acting Lieutenant Sergeant Jason Dunham, you can send it to media@tehachapicityhall.com. We'll get it to him. If you've got a show thought, question, idea where you'd like us to take another topic, send it to media@tehachapicityhall.com. We appreciate the time you spend with us, and we'll catch you again soon.
Tehachapod is a conversation about Tehachapi, featuring the community members who make this such a special place to call home. If you have a question or a thought you'd like to share, email media@tehachapicityhall.com. Thank you to Gary Mazzola for sharing his song, This is Tehachapi.